like to introduce back to the stage Mr. Daniel Darwin.
Colt 45 is the name of a beer that is indeed, I believe, sold here, but many of the friends I've managed to make don't drink it, so it must not be sold very well. Colt 45 is the name of a beer not sold very well here, but sold like nobody's business in the Philippines, just absolutely all over the Philippine Islands, but especially in Manila, the capital where I lived my life until my 18th year. Colt 45 is the name of a beer. Well, not so much a beer as a malt liquor. I heard a pun once from someone, from that comedian Andy Dick on TV. He said, liquor in the front, poker in the rear. It wasn't very funny, but I'll bet I at least chuckled because I do have this irremediable penchant for puns and the like, and by the like, I guess I mean words in general. They tell me I have a way with words, but they're wrong. I don't. It's words that have a way with me. Colt 45 is the name of a beer not sold very well here, not even really a beer, but a malt liquor. And I used to sit back in my wicker chair on my porch in Manila with my friends and tip back this bubbly bottle of not beer to my 15-year-old lips and sweat and drink and get tipsy with my friends and fear just absolutely nothing at all because I felt strong and beefy and rebellious. Like James Dean or something. Like Jimmy Dean pressing that ice-cold bottle to his beautiful and forlorn forehead, living like he'd die tomorrow, dreaming like he never did. Man, I wanted to be James Dean so bad. His white t-shirt and his tight jeans and his red jacket and his red car and his sweating bottle of ice-cold beer under the ever-smiling 1950s sun. Colt 45 is the name of a gun that I'll pretty well bet everyone I know of knows of, including especially my grandfather, Bob, father of my father, of strong and crackly Irish stock, who laughs like Santa and who calls me son. Colt 45 is the name of a gun that I used to fire with my grandfather, Bob, in the firing range he manages outside of Allentown, Pennsylvania, because he said to me, son, it'll make you a man. And I felt like a man. I was a good shot and often got a 7 or 8 out of 10, hitting the bogey, a turkey, or a hen, or a faceless man's chest, which was really fun. Colt 45 is the name of a gun. Well, not just a gun, but a semi-automatic caliber chosen to replace the Colt 38 because of its distinct ability to explode the skull in one hit. Or if the trunk is what took a brunt of it, leave a hole large enough for you to worm your fist through. They say Filipinos are like bamboo. Because there's this thing, see, about bamboo, and it is that you can push it, and it bends, but it never breaks. I once heard this pun, well, not so much a pun as a pun-based joke, but it's about bamboo, so I'll tell it to you. Panda walks into a restaurant, orders a couple bamboo shoots and a cold beer. When he's done eating, pulls out a Colt 45 and shoots the waiter in the face. Proceeds to lumber from table to table, shooting every person in the back of the head. When all are dead, Panda heads out and is stopped by manager. Manager says to Panda, good Jesus, what have you done? Panda shrugs, goes, dude, I'm a panda. Look it up. Manager goes to dictionary, looks up panda, reads, a tree-dwelling marsupial of Asian origin characterized by distinct black and white coloring, eats shoots and leaves. There's this thing about bamboo, see? It may bend, and it may bend, and it may not break, yes, but it will never move forward. And it'll only grow so tall. And one bullet hit from a Colt 45 can split a stalk in half. Colt 45 is the name of a beer, and the spokesperson here is that guy who played Lando Calrissian in the Star Wars movies, which is really random, right? The spokesperson in the Philippines who I'd see growing up in Manila all over the place on billboards, in papers, on TV, he was this biracial actor, Filipino-American like me, named JV. Now there's this thing about JV, see, it's that he looks American. And not only that, but I think he grew up in LA and wouldn't be able to say a single word in his mother tongue if he were holding a gun to his pretty little face. And that's why Colt 45 Philippines chose to replace their last brown schlub of a celebrity with JV, see? And that's why Colt 45 Philippines chose to erase their last motto, which was in my mother tongue, with their new English one, be a man. And that's why there's an American flag wisping in the wind behind JV's sweating western face and rippling pecs, exuding a distinctly American sex appeal and egging us on to be a man. And that is why as he thrusts the thick neck of this sweating bottle of Colt 45 at the viewer, an eagle's cry is heard from behind JB, and we can see in his eye a beckoning call to drop all and buy a beer from this guy and be a man. And that is why I would sit on my porch in the scorching Philippine midday light with my friends who, despite the fact that we grew up in Manila, ate Filipino food, wore Filipino clothes, and watched Filipino beer ads, were white. That is why we would sit back in our wicker chairs and tip back this bubbly bottle of not beer to our 15-year-old lips and rest content in the fact that at the end of the day, at the end of it all, we had inside of us an eagle's call. And I'll grant it that mine was only half an eagle, but an eagle with one wing can still call out and sing, and mine sang with a bang and rang loud and proud. Oh, say, can you see that the dawn's early light? The light is bright, huh? Could someone turn that down, please? Someone? Anyone? No one? Colt 45 is the name of a gun, but it isn't the name of just any old gun. It's the one that was issued by the American government bent on relieving its incessant frustrations in the Philippine-American War. I'm sorry, insurgency. See, the Colt 38 wasn't doing too great against the Filipino warriors who had liberated themselves with American help from 400 oppressive, unyielding years of Spanish colonialism, only to be taken over promptly by their American saviors. The Colt 38 stopped the warriors too late because the Filipino soldiers were hyping themselves up by chewing on this root called the betel nut, and their adrenaline and their rage and the betrayal of their people were enough to keep them charging after each searing bullet tore through their flesh, and they were reaching the Americans, they were reaching the soldiers, and they were hacking them apart with their machetes. And the Americans would push and push at the Filipino ranks, and they would bend and they would bend, but they would never break. The Americans were flummoxed at what it would take to massacre these little brown monkeys. What it would take would be something bigger, something stronger, more manly, more western, more cowboy, to show these idiot creatures who's the real boss in town, to ensure that these resilient ingrates would not survive. Enter the Colt 45. Four years of war. Some say up to 1 million Filipinos killed. 1 million little brown brothers with exploded skulls and holes large enough for you to worm your fist through, baking in piles under the Philippine sun. 1 million. Now, million is a diluted word. It's been watered down and rendered effete by overuse and abuse, but let's dwell as well as we can on the thought of 1 million. I mean, that's 6 zeros. That's 6 zeros of mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers and others, so many others who heard the eagle's call and answered it with joy, who looked up to receive him, looked up to believe in his name, and did not think to prepare for his talents to sink into their soft, brown throats. Man walks into country, sees a city-dwelling people of Asian origin, pulls out a Colt 45 and kicks her in the front, and rapes her in the rear. Heads out and is stopped by manager. Manager says to man, good Jesus, what have you done? Man shrugs, goes, dude, I'm American. Look it up. I'm American. I'm an American. This is an American body. I am an American citizen just like all of you, and I don't know what to do. How do you reconcile a hate that's 100 years late? How do you ask for regret from a world that forgets? On whom can I lay the blame for the shame of my people betrayed and exploited and stunted and massacred and murdered and killed by my people? Do I hate my dad for being white? Do I hate my mom for loving my dad? Do I hate my friends for tipping back in Manila and eating food there and shooting pool there and not leaving with their tails stuck between their legs? Do I hate my brothers for guzzling the beer? Do I hate my grandfather for owning the gun? Do I hate just absolutely everyone? Is that right? Is that right? I want to sometimes. God, I want to spite. I want to run towards like that light, like the light that I see staring at the sun through my eyelids, like some sort of bright white airport light. Good God, that light is so bright. Please turn that down, please. It's splitting me in half. sorry. I broke the fourth wall and all. It's just that I have this thing with my eye where I like the dark better. I feel as though it'd be wise here to apologize. I think I got a bit carried away, but it's because of what I always say. You know, words have their way with me. And I guess it just goes to show, you know, that a pun isn't always a funny one. Colt 45 is the name of a gun, is the name of a beer, and I'm right here, simmering down. An animal characterized by distinct white and brown coloring. And I don't know what to do. See, there is so much anger in me, and there is none. And there is so much pain in me, and there is none. And there are so many wants in me, but at the end of the day, at the end of it all boils down to just this one. I still want to be James Dean. I want his bright white skin and his tight t-shirt and his cool red jacket and his fiery red car and his starry eyes as blue as a young night. And despite now knowing all I now know, despite the glaring white truth of a page erased by the winners who wrote history an age ago, and the rage I feel at the betrayal of my people, despite being unable to unsee what I've seen, I still want to be James Dean. And the thing that baffles me, the thing that bakes my brain and chokes at my soul is that it's not just me. It's my whole country. And what does that mean? What does it mean that from the break of each day to the thick of each night, we look at ourselves in mirrors, in windows, on chrome, on steel, on chips of blinking things, and as we catch sight of ourselves, we hear a voice whisper up the backs of our spine and whisper, "Fine, you should be white." We bleach our skin with soaps and washes and potions and rubs, trying in vain to scrub ourselves fair. We scorch in our hair till it's streaked in blonde or brown or red or curly and wavy and pumped up and dead. We bury contacts of every color Crayola's ever made into the swell of our blinking eyes. We tell ourselves to despise ourselves. We're the product of some distorted form of nationalized Stockholm Syndrome, a country full of Patty Hearsts, and we roam and we thirst for the last of the glow of the stalks of beams of white light that meet us in the night and eat and shoot and leave. And when did we start believing this? You could say it started when 5 centuries ago, a score of Spaniards washed up on our shore, threw down their oars, took a long look around and whispered, "Fine, this is now mine." And we told ourselves that to be darker than them was to be too dark, to be shorter than them was to be too short, to be different from them was to be stupid, uneducated, immobile, poor, or you could say it started when 4 centuries later an American general embraced us with a smile and a piece of paper sign in Paris in his left hand and a Colt 45 in his right, and with a twinkle in his eyes he shouted, "Surprise!" and kneed us in the gut and cut 1 million of us down to size. And in the fallout of our battle cries we told ourselves the same white lies for 50 odd years more. Or you could say it started when we chose to forget. When we rose from the ashes into our independence and we chose to forget all this blood we had let. Perhaps we forgot in the harsh light of what was to come, of the unspeakable horrors of the Second World War, in light of the sickness of slick Japanese bayonets slicing our breasts, in light of the deafness that followed bombs as they laid waste to our streets, leaving us the second most devastated city in the world. Or in light of the simple and desolate truth that sometimes the only way to outlive a betrayal is to forget it ever happened. We survived all this and we came out with a name, and in light of the things we'd worked so hard to gain, we took pains to forget all the things we'd long lost. But what was the cost? We chose to forget it now. We end up drinking a beer marketed to make us feel like American men, but named after a gun designed by American men to kill us. We chose to forget it now in little ways each and every single day. Skin whiteners, hair dyes, nose jobs, fake eyes. We end up reenacting colonialism onto our own flesh. We pry a hole in our souls and let a white fist worm its way through. We forget our past, and what does that do? If he, the Filipino, forgets this past, then he, the American, gets to too. If I, the Filipino, hadn't been so quick to forget, then maybe, just maybe, I, the American, would have had a chance to change the discourse, to think a little longer about what blood feels like dripping from my hands before taking all these steps into other costly, brutal lands. Like Vietnam, like Cuba, like Korea, like Afghanistan, like Iraq. If I, the Filipino, take the blame for my wounds, my skin, my scars, then I, the American, will never know my own shame, will never be shown that I broke my oath, will never be able to hope for growth, and the cycle unspoken will go on unbroken, and history will keep ticking on to the clicking cockback of a cold, cold 45, tearing gaping holes in bodies and lands around the world. We are, all of us, a scarred people. But we must find a way to find beauty in our scars, because only in that moment will our beauty be ours. We must find a way from the break of each day to the thick of each night to look at ourselves in mirrors, on windows, on chrome, on steel, on chips and blinking things, and when we catch sight of ourselves to hear a voice creep up the backs of our spines and whisper, find, there is beauty in these scars. These scars are mine. Taglay ng mga dungis na ito ang kagandahan. Akin ang mga sugat na ito. Akin ang mga sugat na ito. Akin ang mga sugat na ito.
Esse tal de fulano, seu maneiro. Brincadeira, joguinho, rapaz, que beleza. Ver homem capaz de aguentar a tristeza de amor. Esse malandro bonito, sagaz, americano. De fulano, seu maneiro. Ei, Joe. Brincadeira, joguinho, rapaz, que beleza, meu bem. Ver homem capaz de aguentar a tristeza de amor, meu bem. Aguentar esse amor, amor. Vai ter briga de amor, amor. Briga por mim. malandro, bonito, sagaz, tão ligeiro. Tal de fulano, seu maneiro. Brincadeira, joguinho, rapaz. Que beleza, meu bem, ver o povo aguentar esse amor.
Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. We have one final number for you guys. Thank you for sharing this time with us. I want to thank Hillary McAndrew and Lincoln Center for having us again this year, this very, very special project. Again, Dina Fanay on vocals, Roger Gassis on guitar, incredible Wawai Sawai from Bukidnon in Mindanao, Mr. Shane Shanahan, Mr. Chuck Palmer on drums that has written a lot of material with us. Amanda Ruta on bass. We also had Ariel de la Portilla and Josh Werner also on bass. 3 bass players. It was very fun. Mr. Tom Chess on ney. Claudia and Andrew, our tap dancers. James Luke, Nico Maka, Cindy Alexander. It's been incredible. Mr. Manny de la Portilla on video that you've seen of our trip to the Philippines. We're going to do a little mashup now of a song by Chuck Palmer from a record that we made called Kingston Morning, which is called Follow Me to the Sun, followed by a reprise of Manila. By the Door, we do have CDs also that include a lot of the artists you're seeing on stage, and they're $10. And thank you so much for listening to us tonight. I really appreciate it.